Again, I say, I do not know what has become of Harley Warren, though I think, almost hope, that he is in peaceful oblivion, if there be anywhere so blessed a thing. It is true that I have for 5 years been his closest friend and a partial sharer of his terrible researches into the unknown. I will not deny, though my memory is uncertain and indistinct, that this witness of yours may have seen us together, as he says, on the Gainesville Pike, walking towards Big Cypress Swamp, at 11:30 on that awful night, that we bore electric lanterns, spades, and a curious coil of wire with an attached instrument. I will even affirm, for all these things have played a part in that single hideous scene which remains burned into my shaken recollections. But what followed, and of the reason I was found alone and dazed on the edge of the swamp in the next morning, I must insist that I know nothing save what I have told you over and over again. You say to me that there is nothing in that swamp or near it which could form the basis of the setting I saw in that frightful episode. I reply that I know nothing beyond what I have saw. Vision or nightmare it may have been, vision or nightmare I fervently hope it was. Yet it is all my mind retains of what took place in those shocking hours after we left the sight of men, and why Harley Warren did not return, he or his shade, or some nameless thing that I cannot describe, alone can tell us. As I have said before, the weird studies of Harley Warren were well known to me, and to some extent shared by me. Of his vast collection of strange, rare books on forbidden subjects, I have read all that are written in the languages of which I am master. But these are few compared to these are few compared to those in the languages which I cannot understand. Most, I believe, are in Arabic, and the fiend-inspired book which brought on the end, the book which he carried in his pocket out of the world, was written in characters whose I never saw anywhere else. Warren would never tell me just what was in that book. As to the nature of our studies, must I say again that I no longer retain full comprehension? It seems to me rather merciful that I did not, for they were terrible studies, which I pursued more through reluctant fascination than through actual inclination. Warren always dominated me, and sometimes I feared him. I remember how I shuddered at his facial expression on that night before the awful happening, when he talked so incessantly of his theory, why certain corpses never decay but rest firm and fat in their tombs for 1,000 years. But I do not fear him now, for I suspect he has known horrors far beyond my ken. I now fear for him. Once more, I say that I have no clear idea of our object on that night. Certainly, it had much to do with something that book Warren carried with him, that ancient book of undecipherable characters which had come to him from India the month before. And I swear I do not know what it was that we expected to find. Your witness says he saw us at 11:30 on the Gainesville Pike, headed for Big Cypress Swamp. This is probably true, but I have no distinct memory of it. The picture seared into my soul is of one scene only, and that the hour must have been long after midnight, for a waning crescent moon was high in the vaporous heavens. The place was an ancient cemetery, so ancient that I trembled at the manifold signs of immemorial years. It was a deep, damp hollow, overgrown with rank grass, moss, and curious creeping weeds, and filled with a vague stench which my idle fancy associated absurdly with rotting stone. On every hand there were the signs of neglect and decrepitude, and I seemed haunted by the notion that Warren and I were the first living creatures to invade a lethal silence of centuries. A valley over the rims, one waning moon peered through the noisome vapors, and that seemed to emanate from unheard catacombs, and by its feeble, wavering beams I could distinguish a repellent array of antique slabs, urns, cenotaphs, and mausoleum facades, all crumbling, moss-grown, and moisture-stained, partly concealed by the gross luxuriance of unhealthy vegetation. My first vivid impression of my own presence in this terrible necropolis concerns the act of pausing with Warren before a certain half-obliterated sepulchre, and of throwing down some burdens which we seemed to have been carrying I now observed that I had with me an electric lantern and 2 spades, whilst my companion was supplied with a similar lantern and a portable telephone outfit. No word was uttered, for the task seemed known to us, and without delay we seized our spades and commenced to clear away the grass, weeds, and drifted earth from this flat, archaic mortuary. After uncovering the entire surface, which consisted of 3 immense granite slabs, we stepped back some distance to survey the charnel scene, and Warren appeared to make some mental calculations. Then he returned to the sepulchre, and using his spade as a lever, sought to pry the slab lying nearest to the stony ruin, which may have been a monument in its day. He did not succeed, and motioned for me to come to his assistance. Finally, our combined strength loosened the stone, which we raised and tipped on its side. The removal of the slab revealed a black aperture, from which rushed an effluence of miasmal gases so nauseous that we started back in horror. After an interval, we, however, approached the pit again, and found the exhalation less than bearable. Our lantern disclosed the top of a flight of stone steps, dripping with some detestable ichor of the inner earth, and bordered by moist walls, encrusted with niter. And now, for the first time my memory records a verbal discourse, Warren addressing me at length in his mellow tenor voice, a voice singularly unperturbed by our awesome surroundings. "I'm sorry to have to ask you to stay on the surface," he said, "but it would be a crime to let any but one with your frail nerves go down there. You can't imagine, even from what you have read, and from what I've told you, the thing I shall have to see and do. It's fiendish work, Carter, and I doubt if any man without ironclad sensibilities could ever see it through and come up alive and sane. I don't wish to offend you, and heaven knows I'd be glad enough to have you with me, but the responsibility is in a certain sense mine, and I can't drag a bundle of nerves like you down to a probable death or madness. I tell you, you can't imagine what the thing is really like, but I promise to keep you informed over the telephone of every move. You see, I've enough wire here to reach the center of the earth and back. I can still hear, in memory, those coolly spoken words, and I can still remember my remonstrances. I seemed desperately anxious to accompany my friend into those sepulchral depths, and yet he proved inflexibly obdurate. At one time he threatened to abandon the expedition if I remained insistent, a threat which proved effective, since he alone held the key to the thing. All this I can still remember, though I no longer know what manner of thing we sought. After he had obtained my reluctant acquiescence in his design, Warren picked up the reel of wire and adjusted the instrument, and at his nod I took one of the latter and seated myself upon an aged, discolored gravestone close by the newly uncovered aperture. Then he shook my hand, shouldered the coil of wire, and disappeared within that incredible ossuary. For a minute I kept sight of the glow of his lantern. I heard the rustle of wire as he laid it down after him, but the glow soon disappeared abruptly, as if a turn in the staircase had been encountered, and the sound died away almost as quickly as I was alone, yet bound to the unknown depths by those magic strands whose insulated surfaces lay green beneath the struggling beam of the waning crescent moon. I constantly consulted my watch by the light of my electric lantern, and listened with feverish anxiety at the receiver of the telephone. But for more than a quarter of an hour I heard nothing. Then a faint clicking came from the instrument, and I called down to my friend in a tense voice. Apprehensive as I was nevertheless unprepared for the words which came up from that uncanny vault, in an accent more alarmed and quivering than I had heard previously from Harley Warren. He who had so calmly left me a little while ago, he now called me from below in a shaky whisper, more portentous than the loudest shriek. "God, if you could only see the things I am seeing! I could not answer. Speechless, I could only wait, and then the frenzied tones came again. Carter, it's terrible, monstrous, unbelievable. This time my voice did not fail me, and I poured into the transmitter a flood of excited questions. Terrified, I continued to repeat, Warren, what is that? What is that? Once more, came the voice of my friend, hoarse with fear and now apparently tinged with despair. I can't tell you, Carter. It's too utterly beyond thought. I dare not tell you. No man could know it and live. Great God, I have never dreamed of this. Stillness again, save for my now incoherent torrent of shuddering inquiry, and then the voice of Warren in a pitch of wild consternation. Carter, for the love of God, for the love of anything holy, back the slab and get out of this if you can, quick. Leave everything else and make for the outside. It is your only chance. Do as I say and don't ask me to explain. I heard, yet I was only able to repeat my frantic questions. Around me were tombs and darkness, and the shadows below me. Some peril beyond the radius of human imagination. But my friend, he was in greater danger than I, and through my fear I felt a vague resentment that he should deem me capable of deserting him under such circumstances. More clicking, and after a pause, a piteous cry from Ward. Beat it! For God's sake, put the slab back and beat it, Carter! Something in the boyish slang of my evidently stricken companion unleashed my faculties. I formed and shouted a resolution. Warren, brace up, I'm coming down. But at this offer, the tone of my auditor changed to a scream of utter despair. Don't. You can't understand. It's too late, and my own fault. Put back the slab and run. There's nothing else you can do. Now, the tone changed. Again, this time, acquiring a softer quality of hopeless resignation. Yet it remained tense through my anxiety. Quick, before it's too late. I tried not to heed him. I tried to break through the paralysis which held me, and to fulfill my vow to rush down to his aid. But his next whisper found me still held inert in the chains of Star Carter. Carter, hurry. It's no use. You must go. Better one than two. The slab. A pause, more clicking, and then the faint voice of Warren. Nearly over now. I don't make it harder on me. Cover up those damn steps and run for your life. You're losing time. So long, Carter. Won't see you again. Here Warren's whisper swelled into a cry which gradually rose, a shriek fraught with the horror of my hatred. Curse these hell things! Legions, my God, beat it! Beat it! Beat it! After that was silence. I know not how many interminable aeons I sought, stupefied, muttering, calling, screaming into the telephone, over and over again. Through those aeons, I whispered and muttered and called and shouted and screamed, Warren! Warren! Answer me! Are you there? And then came to me the crowning horror of all, the unbelievable, unthinkable, almost unmentionable thing. I have said aeons seemed to elapse after Warren shrieked forth his last despairing warning, and that only my cries now broke the hideous silence. But after a while, there was a further clicking on the receiver, and I strained my ears to listen. And again I called down, Warren, are you still there? And in answer I heard a thing which brought a cloud over my mind. I do not try, gentlemen, to account for the thing, that voice, nor can I venture to describe it in detail, since the first words took me away. It took away my consciousness and created a mental blank which reaches to the time of my awakening in the hospital. Shall I say the voice was deep, hollow, gelatinous, remote, unearthly, inhuman, disembodied? What shall I say? It was the end of my experience. It is the end of my story. I heard it, and knew no more. Heard it as I sat petrified in that unknown cemetery, hollow amidst the crumbling stones and fallen tombs, the rank vegetation and miasmal vapors. Heard it well up the innermost depths of that damnable open sepulchre, as I watched amorphous, necrophagous shadows dance beneath that accursed waning moon. And this is what it said. You fool!